Let's turn our attention now to Super Tuesday. Here were the reactions from Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders.
And we're told, well, when you got to Super Tuesday, it'd be over. Well, it may be over for the other guy. Tell that to the folks in Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Minnesota. Well, I'm here to report we are very much alive.
One of us in this race led the opposition to the war in Iraq. You're looking at him. Another candidate voted for the war in Iraq. One of us has spent his entire life fighting against cuts in Social Security, wanting to expand Social Security. Another candidate has been on the floor of the Senate calling for cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and Veterans programs.
Let's give you an update of where the situation's at Super Tuesday. Joe Biden is really making the most of this momentum after the South Carolina win. Alabama, Arkansas, North Carolina, Virginia, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Oklahoma, Tennessee. 8 out of 14 Super Tuesday wins for Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders, not as strong a day. However, he did win one of the biggest delegate counts in California, which means when you look at, well, let's look at Texas as well before we look at the overall result. We're talking about 60% counted so far, and Biden is back in front of Bernie Sanders. Again, another big state in terms of delegates. So it's very close between Biden and Sanders in some of those major states. Let's look at the delegates won so far. Biden is now in the lead with those declared thus far. 173 delegates official for Joe Biden, 114 for Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren just 9, and Bloomberg only 4. So those hundreds of millions look like they've been wasted. Let's go live now to CNN reporter Nadia Ramiro in Washington, D.C., and the story continues to be momentum for Biden.
Absolutely. When you talk about what Joe Biden has been doing, Karen, his campaign is calling this Joe-mentum because he has this momentum. He can owe a lot of that thanks to South Carolina. The 60% black voters in the Democratic Party there in South Carolina have always stood behind Joe Biden, and that has been the party's most loyal and dependable base. That base showed America that Joe Biden was the best candidate to go up against Donald Trump, and now we're seeing it all across the map. So let's take a look at this map, Karen, and talk about some of these states. As you mentioned, Joe Biden really able to sweep the South, picking up all of these states, and that's where you're going to find your more conservative, moderate Democratic voters. He also picked up Minnesota up here. He picked up Massachusetts as well. Minnesota is the state of Amy Klobuchar, so he picked up her supporters. Massachusetts, though, that came as a surprise. 91 delegates there, and we thought that that state would steer more progressive. That's the state where Elizabeth Warren is from. She's a senator from Massachusetts, but instead the state went to Joe Biden. But still, we are looking at California and Texas, how they will split up those delegates, and that's what matters when you talk about this numbers game. Karen?
And in terms of the results for Biden, he'd be encouraged, wouldn't he, by those stronger than expected performances in states like Virginia and Massachusetts, as you say, where it was expected that Sanders and Warren would outdo him.
Absolutely. And when you look at a state, not to mention even including North Carolina, right? North Carolina, Virginia, those will likely be battleground states. Virginia had long since been a very, very red state, but folks like Michael Bloomberg have spent a lot of money in there. And that's why if you look at the state house, all blue. The governor's mansion, blue. All Democrats in Virginia. That's still going to be a battleground state, and so is North Carolina. And for Joe Biden winning North Carolina tonight, he can now make that pitch that he's the best candidate to go up against President Trump in the general election because he has the support of that Democratic base, and he could likely sway some of those independent voters or some of those Republican voters who are not happy with what they've seen from President Donald Trump. This is part of Joe Biden's Biden's plan. This is what he's been pitching to the American people all year long, all throughout this primary season. And this is what it comes to tonight, having a big win for Joe. Kieran?
And I know it's a Super Tuesday. It's been a long Tuesday for you, Nadia Ramiro. Appreciate your time. Thanks for that.